Oklahoma should have made Gloria Grahame a bigger star in 1955. Instead, it made her worse. Behind the scenes, she was a mess. She was hiding a bad lip surgery by putting cotton in her mouth, showing up to practices drunk, and ruining her co-star's scenes. Then she got married to her grandson, who was 13 years old, which caused a scandal that would follow her forever. This is the sad story of how an Oscar winner became an actor in a B movie. Grahame was born in Los Angeles on November 28, 1923. Even though her family had a rich past, life wasn't always as exciting as it seemed. Reginald, her father, was an English builder with royal blood that went back to King Edward III. But her mother Jean was the most important person in her life. She was a strict and driven Scottish stage actress, and her only goal was to make Gloria a star. Jean began with her daughter when she was young. Gloria was already reading Shakespeare by 5. By age 12, she was performing in nearby theater. Not everything was fine at home, though. In the early 1930s, her father left the family, and money was tight. Jean didn't give up. Gloria was 16 years old when she dropped out of Hollywood High School and went on the road with a play called Good Night, Ladies, 1942. No longer did school matter. Gloria was going to be an actor, since her mother said so. Gloria was already on Broadway at age 19 when she was in The World's Full of Girls, 1943. In 1944, Louis B. Mayer, who was in charge of MGM, saw her perform on stage. He hired her because he liked what he saw. One thing was wrong, though: her last name. He felt that Hallward sounded too much like Lana Turner, who was also an MGM star. For ease of mind, he told her to drop it and use her mother's stage name instead. She was born right then and there. She would joke years later that the studio made her name sound like Frankenstein's monster. Blonde Fever, 1944, her first movie, got off to a rough start. She played a waitress who tries to get a married man to like her. People paid attention to her even though the movie wasn't a hit. Some reviewers said she looked a lot like Lauren Bacall. It wasn't easy behind the scenes, though. She had to pull off her own tricks. During one rough fight scene, she threw a plate over her co-star's head. She had a scar on her left palm that would not go away. Official rules in Hollywood said that the character had to be softer than it was in the original plot. But Louis B. Mayer still thought she was too hot and told the directors to tone it down. One scene in Blonde Fever changed everything, even though the movie didn't do well. She told her co-star, "I don't want your money," in one scene. "I want to live with you." The crowd shivered. At the test, someone wrote that she looked like a spider making a web. After that, one of Hollywood's best directors, Frank Capra, saw her. In 1940's It's a Wonderful Life, she played Violet Bick, a woman who seemed nice but was actually a little dangerous. She was only in the movie for 10 minutes, but she stole every scene. It got sad for Violet in the movie's dark alternate world, which was a precursor to the troubled women Grahame would later play. The movie wasn't a hit at the time. It lost money in the end, but someone did notice her. Howard Hughes thought she was great and bought out her contract from MGM, who had let her go because they didn't think she was right for Hollywood. Over time, her performance as Violet became famous, and movies like Back to the Future were based on it. The movie Crossfire, 1947, which dealt with racism, was the real turning point in her career. At the time, Hollywood didn't talk much about it. As Ginny Tremaine, she played a tired bartender who gets caught up in a murder case. The people she wrote about always seemed tough and broken at the same time. "I've been kicked around all my life" is one of her lines. That it happened in the dark for the first time ever proved that. Anomalies for the part came her way, but she didn't win. It didn't matter, though. She was now seen as the perfect femme fatale in Hollywood. The movie did well at the box office and was nominated for 5 Oscars, including Best Picture. I didn't spend a lot of money on it, so it didn't make a lot of money. She was at the top of her game by 1950. In the movie In a Lonely Place, which stars Humphrey Bogart, she played Laurel Gray, a woman who falls in love with a troubled screenwriter. But what was going on off-screen was just as exciting. At the time, he was her husband. It got so bad that they signed a strange contract that said she couldn't bother or tease him on set. Their marriage was already in trouble. But the big shock came in 1951, when Ray found her in bed with Tony, his 13-year-old son. She almost lost everything because of the incident, but the movie still became a classic. Some people even say she was better than Bogart in the role. Then came 1952's The Bad and the Beautiful, which won her ANS. Her role was as Rosemary Bartlow, a Southern belle who gets caught up in a sad love story. It was one of the shortest acts ever to win an Academy Award. She was only on screen for 9 minutes and 32 seconds. She made the most of every second and said lines that were both sweet and sad. 5 Oscars were given to the movie, and Grahame got one for Best Supporting Actress. However, her emotional life was getting worse by that time. She had so much plastic surgery that it hurt her lips and made it hard for her to speak clearly. And people began talking about how she was acting on set. She should have been at the top of her game after winning an Oscar in 1953, but instead it was the start of her downfall. It was almost like she knew what was going to happen because all she said was "thank you very much." She shocked everyone in Hollywood in 1960 when she married Tony Ray, her ex-stepson, and the boy she had been caught with years before. The press said it was the biggest scandal in Hollywood history. Studios turned her down, and she didn't get any more parts. It led to roles in low-budget horror movies like 1970's SIX's Mansion of the Doomed. She left her mark, though, no matter what. She was known for playing strong, but doomed women who were both attractive and weak. Her deep voice, thick eyelids, and signature pout made her stand out. People in charge loved how she mixed beauty and danger. In the 1953 movie The Big Heat, Lee Marvin hits her in the face with hot coffee. It turned into one of the scariest scenes in the history of film noir. The choice to cast Gloria Grahame in Oklahoma, 1955, was one of the weirdest in Hollywood. In film noir, she was known for playing mysterious and dangerous women, which didn't fit with the musical's happy, clean tone. She was cast by director Fred Zinnemann, even though producers wanted Betty Hutton, who was great in Annie Get Your Gun, 1950. But Hutton turned down the part to do a TV special, which turned out to be a disaster. After that, Joan Evans and Mamie Van Doren were thought about, but Zinnemann pushed for Grahame. He thought she was the only actor who could also be seductive. The main issue was that Grahame could not sing. She had no sense of tone at all. Her song, I Can't Say No, was made up of 1,200 different sounds that were recorded over the course of several weeks. The music editor, Jay Blackton, had to put them all together to make something that could be listened to. At the same time, James Dean and Rod Steiger, who played Judd Fry, tried out for the part of Curly McLean. Dean did a great job playing. During his screen test for Poor Judd is Dead, he even broke a chair. His voice wasn't as strong as Gordon McRae's deep opera singing, though, and he lost the part. The movie made Grahame $75,000, which is about $850,000 now. This made things tense on set, especially with Shirley Jones, a new actress who was only making $1,000 a week. The choice to cast Grahame turned out to be a bad one. People didn't like her in the part. She didn't seem funny or cute. Instead, she seemed cold and out of place. People who didn't like her said she was as bad for the part as a rattlesnake at a picnic. It didn't end there for her. What she did on set made things worse. She thought she was the biggest star when she got there because she had just won an Oscar for The Bad and the Beautiful in 1953. But she had a big problem. It looked like bad plastic surgery had paralyzed part of her upper lip. She put cotton under her gums to hide it, which made her words sound funny. Behind her back, the other players began calling it her Novocaine lip. She also wouldn't follow the routine. Gene Nelson, her dance partner for the All or Nothing number, kept getting kicked by her to get more attention. She went too far one day and hit him over the head with a prop jug. Nelson walked off the set in a rage and told the director, "Control your damn actress." Being with her family made things even worse. Things were going badly in her marriage to Cy Howard, and she couldn't stop calling him every hour. It took up to 3 hours longer to film every day because she wouldn't come to set until she talked to him. She was 4 hours late to shoot Surrey with a fringe on top on July 12, 1954, so Gordon McRae had to do his close-ups again in 110-degree heat. By the time the movie was over, 14 team members had complained about her. Some said she even tripped Charlotte Greenwood, who played Aunt Eller, during a dance scene to make fun of her. The wrap party was where everything fell apart. When Grahame got there drunk, he called Shirley Jones a nobody, which was rude, and the group didn't even notice. Photos from behind the scenes that night showed her standing alone while everyone else had a good time. Many people saw Oklahoma and thought Grahame did a terrible job, even though the movie made a lot of money, $8.9 million at the time, equal to $100 million today. The New York Times said she felt like a vamp in Las Vegas than a country girl from a small town. Even though she won an Oscar for her role in a big show, the Hollywood Foreign Press didn't even think about nominating her for a Golden Globe. Behind the scenes, though, the worst damage was done. In July 1955, Hedda Hopper, a powerful gossip columnist, wrote a mean piece called Gloria's Temper Tantrums. She said that people on the team said Grahame was trying to ruin the movie on purpose to get back at the director. After that, MGM dropped her from the cast of Some Came Running, 1958. Her price for movies had dropped from $150,000 to just $25,000 per movie by 1956. Not even the Academy would talk to her. Oklahoma was up for 4 Oscars, including Best Score, but Graham's name was never brought up in their campaigns. When asked why, producer Arthur Hornblow Jr. said, "We didn't want to remind voters of how close she had come." Her job was never the same after Oklahoma. In the 1956 movie The Harder They Fall, she was meant to meet up with Humphrey Bogart again. But Bogart wouldn't work with her. He told Columbia Pictures, "I don't need trouble like that from her." Since she couldn't get any bigger parts, she had to take on small roles just to stay in the business. In 1966, she played a fancy lady in a cheap Western and got paid only $50,000 for the whole thing. The fact that her co-star was a 22-year-old she didn't know showed how far she had fallen. She played dramatic parts in film noir movies, and her real life was just as exciting. She was married 4 times, and all 4 ended badly. The wedding took place in August 1945, when she was only 21 years old. It looked like a quick romance at first, but things quickly turned bad. Even though Clements was only 19, he was already having problems with drinking, gambling, and jealousy. He turned angry, and it became too hard to be married to him. Gloria had to go through the abuse, but after 3 years she finally got away. They split up in June 1948. But there was one more problem. She was taking care of Clement's child. She chose to end the pregnancy, and the next day, she got married to someone else. After the divorce, her ex-husband never really got over it, and his business went downhill. He died in 1981, just 11 days after Gloria, which is a strange coincidence. The director she married for the second time, they got married on June 2nd, 1948, not long after she walked away from Clements. It was already known that Ray was a good director because of the movie They Live by Night. Gloria and Nicholas worked on A Woman's Secret together, and they became together quickly. They had a son named Timothy just 5 months after getting married. It was said around that it was a shotgun wedding, but the real story wasn't over yet. Nicholas Ray is said to have seen Gloria in bed with his 13-year-old son Anthony in 1950. Some say Anthony might have been older, but the couple's split was still final. They broke up while they were making the movie In a Lonely Place, which is about a sad and destructive relationship. It was kind of like seeing their own marriage play out on screen. Even though they were no longer married, she still had ties to the Ray family. In 1954, she married Cy Howard, a writer and director. He was 18 years older than her and was known for being mean. They fought a lot in their marriage, and things often got physical. In 1956, they had a girl named Mariana, but having a child didn't make them closer. Gloria took a pair of scissors and tore Howard's clothes apart during one of their worst fights. She is said to have pulled a gun on him in another. Howard finally gave up and asked for a divorce in 1957. He said she was mentally abusive, and they split up again after a long and angry marriage. Tony Ray wasn't just any man when she married him. He used to be her stepson. He was the son of her ex-husband, director Nicholas Ray. She was married to Nicholas at the time, and Anthony was only 13 years old. They met for the first time in 1948. After many years, in 1951, Nicholas said he saw them together in bed. The couple got divorced, but the real story didn't come out for a long time. Gloria and Anthony got back in touch in 1958. After 2 years, they got married in Tijuana, Mexico, without anyone knowing. They were able to hide it for a while, but the press found out in 1962. The response was very harsh. People were shocked that she married the boy who used to be her husband. The age difference was 14 years. Some people even said she was with him when he wasn't old enough. Even though there were never any charges, the talk never stopped. The news media called her a cradle robber. Both Nicholas Ray and Cy Howard, her ex-husbands, used the story against her when they were fighting over who would have custody of their kids. Gloria didn't like how people saw her. She once said, "Later, I married his son, and you'd think I committed incest." But this marriage lasted 14 years, despite all the anger. Anthony Jr. was born in 1963, and James was born in 1965. After many years, a writer said the whole story about her being with Anthony when he wasn't old enough was false. But the damage was already done. Gloria's job was already in danger. She couldn't move her upper lip fully because of bad plastic surgery, which made her speech sound strange. Hollywood didn't forgive. After she played the part in Oklahoma, 1955, reviewers ripped her apart, saying she was not at all right for it. Behind the scenes, she was hard to work with for directors and co-stars, and the rumors hurt her chances of getting good parts. Things got even worse after Anthony Ray got married. Studios didn't want to work with her at all. She used to be a famous film noir star with roles in The Big Heat and In a Lonely Place. But now she could only get parts in cheap movies and on TV shows. In 1965, she was making less than $20,000 a year instead of $150,000 a year. In fact, the Hollywood Reporter said she was uninsurable, which means that no major company would hire her. Not only did the scandal ruin her job, it also broke up her personal life. It was a chance for her ex-husband to take her kids away. Nicholas Ray went to court to get full custody of their son Timothy, saying that Gloria's relationship with Anthony showed she wasn't a good mother. It took 2 years for the court case to end. At the same time, Gloria's third husband, Cy Howard, fought for custody of their daughter Mariana, saying Gloria was mentally ill. In 1963, he got temporary custody of Gloria and was told by the court to get psychiatric tests. The legal fights cost her a lot of money. She hired lawyers for $85,000, which is about $750,000 today, from 1962 to 1965. The stress finally broke her. She lost her mind in 1964, messed up the inside of her house, and tried to kill herself. Gloria Grahame's movie career was ending by 1956. When she stopped getting big parts, she turned to TV and theater to keep going. From 1956 to 1980, she was in 29 TV shows and played any part she could find on stage. In 1960, she tried to get back into theater with Rashomon and The Time of the Barracudas. It was always hard to get money, though. So she could stay alive, she started acting in cheap movies. She later said that she had a money problem because some of them were so bad. People were scared of the parts one played, but I had to work. She hoped for a real return over and over, but it never came. Even her last 2 movies, Melvin and Howard, 1980, and The Nesting, 1981, got good reviews but didn't bring her back into the public eye. The TV became her safety net. She made $5,000 per show in the 1960s. That sounds like a lot, but it wasn't even close to how much she used to make in movies. It was enough to get by. Hollywood had moved on, but she still had her skills. She was called a major minor star by some, but most people had forgotten about her. Some of her TV parts made me think of her old film noir roles. In 1964, she played the lead role in an episode of The Outer Limits called The Guests. She played an old actor who got stuck in a strange house. She says, "I've been forgotten. No one remembers the pictures I took. It felt like the real world." She turns into dust at the end of the show, as if she never existed. That moment was very scary, like a message about her future. She played a widow on the black market in the 1970 movie Mannix. People who saw her said she was just as sharp as she was in the past and loved the part. These jobs weren't hard, though, no matter how good she was. By the middle of the 1970s, she had mostly been in cheap horror movies and uninteresting TV shows. One reviewer in the New York Times said that seeing her on TV was like going to a seance. It looked like an old Hollywood ghost was showing up for a second and then going away. She turned to theater because movies and TV were no longer giving her real chances. She went away from Broadway for 15 years, but came back in 1972 with The Time of Your Life, starring Henry Fonda and Richard Dreyfuss. The reviewers loved her act. She even got a prize for it. There was no care in Hollywood. Even though the money wasn't great, she kept going and got parts in smaller shows. Acting made her feel better. She went to Liverpool, England, in 1978 and joined the Everyman Theatre. The role of Amanda Wingfield in The Glass Menagerie was one of the best she has ever played. Even though she got standing ovations, she didn't make a big return this time. She never got to the West End in London. Later, one of Gloria's co-stars said that she used the stage like a confessional. The crowd felt better after seeing her pain. No matter how good she was stuck in small roles and only made $500 a week. This was a far cry from the $11,000 a week she used to make as a Hollywood star. The last blow came in 1974, when That's Entertainment, a documentary about the studio's biggest stars, came out. Grahame got an Oscar for her role in The Bad and the Beautiful, but MGM didn't include her in the movie. It looked like Hollywood had erased her. She knew it was going to happen. It was in 1977 that she said, "They'll remember my lips, not my lines." She was wrong, though. People who liked movies never forgot about her. Peter Turner and Gloria Grahame met in 1978. Gloria was 55 years old at the time, 66. She was a famous actress in Hollywood who had won an Oscar and been married 4 times. He was a British star who was having a hard time and trying to find his way. They met in a boarding house in London while she was getting ready for a play. Afterward, he wrote in his book that she was dancing to Staying Alive in a negligee the first time he saw her. People looked down on them because they were almost 30 years apart in age, but they didn't care. They were together until the end. Turner always said she wasn't afraid to be herself and was full of life. Gloria had a strange past of bad love stories. When she married her nephew Tony Ray many years ago, it was the biggest scandal in her life. Nicholas Ray, his father, was a director and had been married to one of her. Her career was ruined by that marriage, but she never seemed to feel bad about it. Turner, on the other hand, said later that his own sexuality was not simple. That made their relationship even stranger. Turner's family lived in Liverpool, where they spent time together, and Gloria had an apartment in New York. She laughed and threw parties like nothing was wrong. But she broke up with Turner all of a sudden in 1980. She didn't say anything. Afterward, he learned why she didn't want him to know she was dying of cancer. She was first told she had breast cancer when she was 50 years old in 1974. Her doctors used radiation to treat her, but she didn't trust science alone. She changed everything about how she lived instead. Even though she had smoked for years, she kicked the habit. She stopped eating artificial foods and only ate plant-based foods. Along with herbal medicines and acupuncture, she chose not to go through chemotherapy. It looked like it would work at first. The cancer was gone after a year, the doctors told her. She went back to acting and said that hard work and determination had helped her beat the sickness. Doctors told her she should have a mastectomy, but she refused to have surgery. She thought no one should touch her body. She stuck to strange and strict routines for the next few years. She only ate organic food because she thought it was better for her. It was once a week that she saw a healing spirit. Every single day she did yoga and meditated. They told her that the cancer might come back, but she didn't care. She told everyone she was better and wouldn't go to the doctor for checks. She was in Melvin and Howard, 1980, and played parts in plays all over the US and UK during this time. After 1980, though, she got sick again. Even though her stomach hurt a lot, she told herself it was just worry. Then, one night in London while putting on The Glass Menagerie, she passed out backstage. They did tests and told her the worst news. It had spread all over her body again. The growths were quite big, a football-sized ball. It had grown to her liver, lymph nodes, and stomach. They told her she only had a few months to live. They begged her to get help, but she wouldn't. She said that treatment was cruel. She wouldn't even take pills. She worked even though her body was getting weaker. She played Albert Nobbs in Liverpool, even though she was so weak she could hardly stand. Her last days were very hard. Her kids helped her get on a plane from London to New York on October 4th, 1981. She wasn't strong enough to walk. They put her on a bed in the middle of the plane. Something went wrong on the flight. Someone in her family had a tumor that burst in their stomach, and she collapsed. There were doctors on the plane, but they couldn't help much. After the plane touched down at JFK, she was taken to the hospital right away. After just a few hours, at 11:15 p.m. on October 5th, she died. It was caused by breast cancer that had spread and pancreatitis. The gathering was not very big. Turner was one of only 12 people who showed up. She had asked to be burned in a fire. Her ashes were spread out in Oakwood Memorial Park in California upon her death. There was no Hollywood glitz or big goodbye. It was just a quiet end. Years later, a movie was made about her last days. Annette Bening plays a movie star who doesn't die in Liverpool, 2017. Turner himself said the most moving things about her, though. She taught me that love isn't about how long you've been together, but how deep you've grown together.